Welcome to What is Truth podcast, exploring truth with T. Hakanson, where we challenge propaganda and seek clarity in the current times. Let's dive in.
Hello, I'm T. Hakanson, and I wrote the book, What is Truth? Now, this is my 10th podcast, and the last podcast number 9, had to do with one of the chapters of the book, which is called Natural Laws. And it talked about the uniqueness of human beings in that we're like God and angels, in that we can think and we can plan and we can choose to do right or wrong, which is different than animals. If a person's walking in the woods and walks across some bear cub and the mother comes out and attacks them, it's not the mother bear's fault because they're just acting out of animal instincts. It's not choosing to say, oh, I'm going to get this human. It's just seeing that their baby cub is in trouble and they're going to defend it because that's what they do instinctually. So we talked about that last week, and this is kind of a continuation of that podcast having to do with the uniqueness of human beings. And I've heard the statement very recently, actually, by someone who I love dearly. And she had said, I'm tired of hearing people's opinions. And, I got to thinking about that. We as human beings are thinking people, and we have opinions. If you have a conversation with somebody, you're stating in many ways your opinion on something, they're stating their opinion. They're not really thinking, and we're not thinking that, oh, this is my opinion. It's just that this is what we think because we've experienced different things. And people have different opinions because of different reasons, because they were brought up in different environments, or they have, they're either male or they're female. People have different ages and have been brought up in different eras. There are different ethnicities, there are different religions, and there are different news sources. All of these things combine to make we human beings who are thinking, to make us think about these different things, and we form an opinion naturally. And now some people watch news and read newspapers only from the mainstream news sources, which are liberal media sources. People who follow these news sources hate Trump, for example, because their news sources push out 90 to 97% negative news about Trump and about conservatives. And so they're forming their opinions by what they're watching and what newspapers they're reading from. I was at a doctor appointment once, and for some reason or other, I was talking with the doctor, and I said, oh, I saw something on either Newsmax or Fox News Channel. And he said, oh, poison. By the way, I went straight out there and changed doctors, by the way. I'm not going to be treated by a doctor who, in my mind, has been poisoned by liberal news media sources. But I do watch, one of my favorite shows, really the only show I regularly watch is The Five on Fox News Channel. And this news source has 4 conservatives and 1 liberal. And so we hear the other side of the story. There's times where I have to take Jessica and go mute because I can't stand hearing this childish, gibberish propaganda. But, I try to listen as long as I can. So anyway, it's quite wise that, these stations do have another side of the story. Now, if people, on the other hand, watch MSNBC or CNN or CNBC, ABC, CBS, ABC, NBC, whatever ones I've said again, and they read liberal newspapers, what they're getting bombarded with every day is up to 97, I think it's more like 100% negative news about conservatives, negative news about Trump. Why do people hate Trump so much? Because they watch one-sided news sources. They feed on their poison every day. And then if people remember the movie The Matrix, there was people who, were hooked up to tubes and stuff, and they lived this mind life. And Neo, the protagonist of the movie, had a choice. Do you want to take the red pill, which will open your mind to reality and truth, or do you want to stay in a catatonic, state or whatever it is, and remain on the blue pill? So think of this: if a person goes into a courtroom and they sit down and the prosecutor up there and he's talking about the defendant, says, this guy did this terrible thing, this guy did this horrible thing, he did this terrible thing, he's just, always negative stuff. And the person in the courtroom says, oh man, this guy is one bad guy. And and I'm going to leave. And so they leave. Now, as they're driving out of the parking lot, then the defense lawyer comes up, but they're not there to hear it. They've only heard the negative side of the story. And this is what people who are feeding on the blue-pilled liberal media are taking their poison every day. They're hearing the poison of how bad Trump is and all these different things. But they're like the person in the courtroom. They don't hear the other side of the story. They're only hearing the narrative of the godless liberal. So people arrive at different opinions also regarding God. Some people believe in the Bible because it is true, and it is true that there is a God, and this book proves that many times over. But there's other people who have the belief that there is no God, and so they come up with theories of how did the world begin. Well, they've come up with the Big Bang Theory, which 13.77 billion years ago, supposedly there was this big explosion. And what exploded? They call it a singularity, which is an infinitely compressed point of high density and high temperature, and it exploded. What's the obvious problem here? Where did the singularity come from? Did it just appear from absolute nothingness? Now, for people who believe in God, we know that God created it. In fact, he probably didn't create it as a singularity. He created the heavens and being and the heavens and earth in 6 days. And he said, be, and it was. And so people are eating different food intellectually. Some people are watching the liberal news sources, which is basically godless. Some people are being educated in universities and they're being brainwashed to believe that basically there is no God and the whole universe and everything started from the Big Bang. And yet these universities, which are supposed to be teaching truth, they ignore laws of physics. The first law of thermodynamics in physics says that energy and matter are constant. In other words, energy and matter don't increase. They just exchange a form of energy to matter and back and forth. And so where did the singularity come from? The first law of thermodynamics basically states that if there is nothing, there is no energy or matter to exchange things from. So there will always be no energy or matter to exchange things from. So where did it come from? Where did this singularity come from? They have no answers. And I challenge people, go online and ask Google, say, how did the universe begin? And they'll always go back to, 13.8 billion years ago, there was the singularity and it exploded. And the question still goes to, okay, where did the singularity come from? Did it just appear out of nothingness? And so but the people who believe these theories still believe that there is no God, and so they have to come up with theories, which are really opinions. It is their opinion that 13.8 billion years ago, in a point of infinite density and temperature exploded. Where did it come from? They have no answers. An academic once told me, because I said it either appeared out of absolute nothingness or God created it. And he says, well, there could be another possibility. It's just that science hasn't found out what that answer is yet. And so I say, okay, why don't we give you another few hundred years till you come up with another valid theory? And I say valid because your first theory isn't valid because it has things appearing from nothingness. They're blue-pilled. The people who follow these, their opinion is there is no God, and they learn from the universities about the Big Bang, and then they learn from the universities that there's evolution. And so evolution basically says that things things were orderly and things are disorderly, and with time, evolution says things go from disorder to order. But science, the second law of thermodynamics, says that everything is falling apart. It's called entropy, and things go from great order to disorder with time. Things are falling apart. And we can know this for an example of a sandcastle. If somebody walking on the beach and you see a sandcastle, can you say, wow, with all the wind and waves and all, that sandcastle just made themselves into this beautiful sandcastle. It's got windows and turrets and bridges, but we know that that's not true, because if there's a sandcastle builder built it. Someone with an imagination and a brain and the ability to build a sandcastle. We know that with time, the sandcastle is going to fall apart due to wind and rain and hurricanes and the ocean and people. We know that things fall apart in our world. They don't grow into more orderliness. The sand on the beach does not on its own become a sandcastle. And so the people who are godless, they only see things from the opinion that there is no God. And so how did everything begin? They've got a theory. Oh, there was this singularity and it exploded. Oh, then how did everything become what it is now? Well, somehow life crawled out of the primordial soup and became amphibians and then reptiles and monkeys and then humans. In other words, things keep getting more orderly with time. Not unevolving, they're evolving. And yet science says things begin in an orderly system and fall apart. We know that things fall apart. You can see the ruins of ancient Greece and Rome. Their old buildings that used to be magnificent are ruins. We can see how things are falling apart because, as we get older and look in the mirror, we say, man, I'm falling apart. Because this is entropy, and it's the second law of thermodynamics. And both of these laws are contrary to what the Big Bang is saying, where things appeared out of nothingness, and then somehow, increased matter and energy to get all these galaxies and all the animals and the planets. My word, energy and matter are compounding itself into more energy or matter. This is contrary to scientific law, which is, by the way, the first law of thermodynamics, that energy and matter are constant. They don't increase or increase. This is the most proven law in science, the most proven law, but they defy it because they have the opinion that there is no God. And so human beings have different opinions because of what they watch, what they read, what they go to school and universities and become indoctrinated with. And other people have opinions because they sit in the courtroom and they hear not only the prosecutor, but they hear the defense and say, Oh, now I have all the facts. And it's not really true that this guy is horrible and terrible because the facts of the defense attorney says otherwise. And so people who see the whole news and the whole picture have opinions formed from facts and not from feelings. And this is why people have different opinions. Now, ooh, wrong page. So, um, now, one thing that people have done is they've said, the liberals for years, they said, oh, we've got global warming. Well, that didn't pan out, so they call it climate change. And they loved people like Elon Musk because he invented electric cars. Oh, we can get rid of our gas spewing pollution cars. And they say, well, this is good for the earth, and we know what's good for you. So we want to ban your gas cars. We want to ban your gas stoves. We want to cut down your cow population because their farts are destroying the atmosphere. And this is because their opinion is based on godlessness and 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 climate change. And yet the world is falling apart. Isaiah 51:6 says, look at the heavens above and look at the earth below. The heavens above will vanish like smoke. The earth below will wear out like an old garment. That's entropy. And our earth is going through entropy. But the liberal mindset wants to put that blame on other humans so that they control other humans and say, we don't want you driving gas cars. We want you to drive electric cars. So their hero all of a sudden was Elon Musk and Tesla. Well, so what happened then? Elon Musk joined the Trump team because because he saw the waste and fraud and abuse in government, and he says, you know, I'm a company owner and I wouldn't allow this in my company or we will go broke because we're spending more money than we're making. And so then all of a sudden, uh, the people say, oh, we hate Musk. And they start firebombing and destroying Tesla dealerships and demolishing their cars and scratching them with keys and doing all kinds of stuff. Well, I thought their big issue was we're going to drive electric vehicles for the environment. Well, that's not important anymore because now Musk is an enemy. Instead of just having Trump derangement syndrome, they have Musk derangement syndrome. And they don't even pay any attention anymore about why they were trying to control us and say, you got to all drive electric cars. Now they've got a whole different perspective. And, and they follow their news sources, which spew out these lies and these blue-pilled lies every day. And that's the only side of the news that they watch. And so we all have different opinions because some people are only watching liberal, biased, godless news, whereas other people are watching the five with the liberal and are reading the Bible of truth. And we wonder why we have such problems in the world. People all have opinions. Some people's opinions are based on fact and both sides of the story. Um, the liberal news outlet and the Democrats, oh, you know, they put out this side of the news for weeks. Oh, we got to save this Abrego Garcia guy in El Salvador. He's a Maryland family man, you know. Well, that's the only side of the news that they'd put out. They didn't put out the fact that he was arrested while hanging around with his fellow gang members, because gang members hang around with each other. They don't hang around with non-gang members. They hang around with gang members. And Abrego Garcia was arrested with them. They don't put out the news that he crossed the U.S. border illegally. They don't put out the news that he was doing human transporting, moving illegal immigrants, 8 of them in a van all the way from Texas to Maryland. They don't tell that side of the story. They don't put out the side of the story that He was beating his wife, who had gone to the court more than once to get an order of protection from him. They don't put that out. That's not their side of the story. They put out the spiel that, oh, he's a Maryland family man. And they go down there and visit this guy. And, one of the recent sayings, years ago, they get into trends in the media and they said, oh, he's got gravitas. Oh, for like a month, gravitas. Nobody even had heard the word before, but it has something to do with he's got respect and that sort of thing. Well, now the latest thing is this the hill you want to die on? The Democrat Party is the party of lies. They push the lie that this is a Maryland family man. Is this the hill you want to die on? To defend a wife-beating gang member, human transporter, illegal immigrant? Is this the hill you want to die on? And so, and the people who defend him only see the defense of him. They don't see the other side of the story. And this is why we have different opinions. All right. Here's one of their latest things. Very recently, there was a Kentucky Derby. And the jockey is from Venezuela. He rode the horse called Sovereignty. Well, the mainstream media now, the pundits are saying Trump wants to deport him. This is totally a lie coming out of the blue. Because he's from Venezuela, Trump wants to deport him. Trump's never said that. Nobody in MAGA has ever said that. No Republican has ever said that. This is just one of their made-up lies. Just because he's from Venezuela, he's here legally. We're not out to deport him. We're out to deport illegal immigrants, and first of all, the criminal ones like Abrego Garcia. But the people who only watch CNN and NBC and all these blue-pilled, godless news sources, this is all they hear. And so they have strong opinions about this because they don't know the whole story. Then they say, I've heard them before on CNN saying, oh, Trump is going to deport all the dark-skinned people. Trump's never said that. The people who make up this lie are the actual bigots and racists. They're the ones who are pushing racism. They're trying to make racism out of everything. And these same people who are saying this are the ones who are harassing Jewish students at universities and everywhere else, and they are the bigots. They are the racists. They project what they are onto others, but they're so blind they can't see it. Why are they blind? Because their opinions are formulated on half-truths from the liberal, godless media, half-truths from universities that teach there is no God, but believe our theory of evolution and believe our theory of the Big Bang. Okay, they continue to make up news stories. They say that Trump and Musk want to take away people's Social Security and Medicare benefits. This is not true. Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, is after fraud, waste, and abuse. And they just arrested somebody who worked in the Department of, I don't know which department it was in the United States, who had bilked $2 million, stole it. And so we're not after citizens who paid into Social Security to take their Social Security away. We're not after people who've paid into the Medicare system and are getting Medicare. We're after the fraud and abuse. We're after the illegal immigrants who are living in five-star hotels at the taxpayers' expense. We're after the illegal immigrants who are beating their wives. We are after the illegal immigrants who are selling drugs and who are taking over apartment buildings. But those who live on the blue pill, They take their blue pill every day. They read their New York Times and the Los Angeles Times and their Minneapolis Star Tribune and their Washington Post, and they watch CNN and ABC and all the major networks, and this is all they know. They have a strong opinion, but it's all based on lies. And the people who are red-pilled America and Canada and Western, Europe, European Union, are looking at all the reality and the facts and the truth and coming up with different opinions, because the opinions are based on truth and fact, and they're not based on media lies. So this is why people have different opinions. We all have opinions, but if we want to be informed, if we're thinking red-pilled people, we're going to say, yeah, but is that the whole story? Is there more to this story than this? I want to hear all the facts before I form an opinion on it. Blue-pilled people are so blind, they think that their reliable news is reliable because it was 40 years ago. And one news source will put out a lie like, oh, Trump's going to send all the dark-skinned people away. And then CNN will say that. And then MSNBC will say that. And ABC will see that. And then NBC will see it. They're all saying it. They're all saying the same thing. It's their talking points. And so these people switch around to all their liberal news sources, and they see this being thrown at them many times. And so they believe it. And so factual news sources and factual friends lead to factual opinions. Truth and facts are for thinking people. Rumors and lies come from the godless, biased news sources, and people who solely feed on those sources have faulty opinions because they're not based on full knowledge and truth. They're based on lies and half-truths. And so I just wanted to talk about that in this podcast, that we all have opinions. And, I think most of my opinions are pretty right, having to do with this book, because it's based on science, it's based on the Bible, it's based on history, it's based on personal experience, it's based on a relationship with God. And yeah, this whole podcast is my opinion, but it's based on fact and it's based on truth. And as far as someone who watches these CNN and all this trash, I frankly don't want to hear your damn opinion. And that's what it is. It is a damned opinion. And God damns it. And so I welcome people to the side of truth, to the side of God. And, this book, What is Truth, talks about a lot of these things. It really doesn't even talk about opinions in the book, but it talked about the human, uniqueness. And it's all tied together. And so it is my opinion that things didn't just appear out of nothingness. It is my opinion that an almighty God said, be, and it was. And that's truth. My opinion is based on truth. And may God bless and keep you. And thank you so much for listening to this podcast.